NieR was released back in 2010 and received poor reviews from critics. But this game still kept a cult following despite its many flaws. 11 years later, in 2021, a remake of NieR titled NieR Replicant version 1.22 was released. And this time the reviews were favorable. It was a faithful remake that also added much needed quality of life features. But what if you're like me? You never played the original NieR, and the changes that were made in this remake go unnoticed and unappreciated. Can I still have fun and enjoy my time with this game? Fun in a Yoko Taro game? To answer my previous question, yes. We just have a very different definition of fun when we play Yoko Taro games. If you are coming from NieR Automata like I did, you might want to lower your expectations when it comes to the game's combat. NieR Replicant's combat does not have the same depth and bravado that Automata has. This is not to say that Replicant's combat is bad, it's serviceable. You can say that the remake was trying to be faithful to the original NieR. This includes the simplified hack and slash combat. But NieR Replicant, even in the original 2010 version, had more than just fighting mobs of enemies. There are homages to other video game genres. There is a village where the game turns into a text-based adventure game. Some might say that this ruins the pacing, others would say that it's a nice break from the constant fighting. It's all subjective. There is also a manner that plays similar to old school Resident Evil games where movement is much slower and the game now has a fixed camera angle. And lastly, another section of the game acts as an homage to top-down action games similar to Diablo and classic Legend of Zelda games. These sudden changes in genre may be jarring, but I thought they were pretty nice. But RPGs tend to be more story-driven anyways, so adequate gameplay may not be a deal breaker for some. I'll talk about the story later in the video, but there are times where the dialogue falls into certain anime tropes. There is a particular scene where the main character is talking about friendship. This is somewhat excused since the main character at that point of the story is like 12, 13 years old. But I imagine that it's even more awkward in the original 2010 NieR, where you watch a middle-aged man suddenly speak like the typical shonen protagonist. So far, after a single playthrough, those are my only gripes with the game. I'd say that things are turning out to be pretty good so far. Speaking of good, visually, this game looks pretty good. NieR Replicant goes for what I call a semi-realistic anime art style, similar to what we see in Final Fantasy XIV and NieR Automata. Compare that to the Xenoblade or Fire Emblem franchises where the anime aesthetic is embraced with exaggerated facial features and vibrant colors. Instead, NieR Replicant is grounded in reality and uses a more muted color palette. This is very fitting since the world of NieR is an alternate reality of our own, and Yoko Taro's stories are very bleak and unforgiving. I also need to acknowledge that the music was remastered for this game, and there seems to be some division as to which soundtrack is better, the original or the remake. Something similar happened when Final Fantasy X got its soundtrack remastered for the PlayStation 3 version of the game. I've noticed somewhat of a pattern when it comes to remaster music. The listener tends to prefer the first version that they have heard. Because I listened to NieR Replicant 1.22's version of the soundtrack first, I do prefer it over the original score that was released in 2010. But that's not to say that the original soundtrack is bad, far from it. Now, I'm not an expert in music, so how I judge music is based on 3 questions. Number 1, is it pleasing to my ears? Number 2, What emotion does the music convey? And number 3, how is the music utilized? It's common for video games to use music to elevate moments in the story, tone, or even atmosphere. To be honest, that third one is probably the most important for me. There is a reason why we remember Red on Mount Silver in Pokemon Gold and Silver, Dragon Roost Island in Wind Waker, and Kingdom Hearts' main menu theme. So how is NieR Replicant's music utilized? If you play RPGs, then you already have a few answers to that question. You know town and village themes when you hear them. You know a boss battle theme when you hear it. The vocal in NieR's music are sung with the fictional language that has been dubbed Chaos Language. To quote from the PlayStation blog, Chaos Language is invented to sound as if modern languages had drifted away for thousands of years to finally become indistinguishable to us. This is why the vocal tracks in NieR Replicant and even NieR Automata sound reminiscent of English, Japanese, French, Spanish, and Italian. It fits the world building, since NieR does take place in an apocalyptic future. Even the track, Song of the Ancients, plays a minor role in the main story, as the translation for its lyrics have been lost to time. Okay, that's cool and all, but does the music sound good? NieR Replicant is the best soundtrack I have ever listened to. Better than the Pokemon series, better than the Zelda series that I so dearly love. Better than Kingdom Hearts, Chrono Trigger, Marvel vs. Capcom, Dragon Ball FighterZ, Bloodborne, Omega Strikers, Guilty Gear Strive. I think this is even better than its sequel, NieR Automata. NieR Replicant's soundtrack is not just good, it's absolutely amazing. I am tempted to call it a masterpiece, but I'm not educated in music, so I cannot make such a claim without being able to back it up. Which is why I recommend Jonathan Baruch's YouTube channel, which has multiple videos explaining how the music is composed in NieR Replicant. I've watched these videos, and honestly, I have no clue what Jonathan is talking about, but I am still fascinated regardless. If I could play the entire soundtrack for you in this video, I would. But I need to restrain myself. Instead, here is a list of some of my favorite tracks that I recommend for you. Snow in Summer, Fleeting Words, Grandma, City of Commerce, Song of the Ancients, Devila, and Hills of Radiant Wind. And here are 3 samples for you to listen to, starting with Kaine Salvation. I find it very ironic that this track does have an air of elegance to it, despite Kaine herself being very strong-willed, independent, and having quite the sailor's mouth.
Now pull your head out of your goddamn ass and start fucking helping us!
But that's all intentional. My second track for you is Emil's Sacrifice. Despite this being one of multiple renditions of Emil's theme, it is the one that seems to be the most used, and it's even used during moments when Emil is not present or has very little involvement. It's a track that's often used when tragedy occurs throughout the story. Emil's sacrifice does evoke this emotion of grief or loss, but I would say it's more specifically the loss of innocence. Or maybe I am overanalyzing this. Anyways, my final track for you is Shadow Lord. I am a sucker for transitions that go from low energy to high energy. It also has some religious undertones, but maybe that's because of both the choir and the organ you hear throughout the song. If the music somehow does not tickle your fancy, then perhaps the story will. The story is part of the reason why the original NieR kept such a dedicated cult following despite its numerous flaws. On the surface, NieR Replicant is a story about an older brother trying to protect his younger sister. In truth, it's far more than that. NieR Automata story was about robots asking, what does it mean to be human? And I think NieR Replicant story provides a multitude of answers to that question. It's a story about love, loss, sacrifice, and especially acceptance. Accepting yourself, accepting others, accepting the truths that you want to deny. The world of NieR is shrouded in so much mystery and lost history that sometimes it becomes difficult to accept the truths that you didn't know of. It shatters your perception of the world around you, and you would rather be blissfully ignorant. Combine all of this with moral gray areas. Yoko Taro did admit that the idea of two opposing sides who genuinely believe that they're doing the right thing served as inspiration for the story. Our protagonist believes he is doing the right thing. The antagonist believes he is doing the right thing. When you understand NieR's world and the condition it is in, you can see that their actions do fall into a moral gray area. But how does Yoko Taro do it? How does he craft stories that ask philosophical questions as you withstand emotional gut punches? I'll provide answers without spoilers, just in case there are viewers who are still on the fence about giving NieR Replicant a chance. I already lightly touched on this, but the world building is a large one. The world is fleshed out in a multitude of ways, with journals and documents you could read on loading screens being some of the first ones you will experience. There are some side quests that flesh out certain aspects of the world and even people's daily lives. But I think the most noticeable ones are changes to the world itself. More specifically, the shades. As you progress the story, the shades become more frequent and more aggressive. There are two small details that you can easily miss in the beginning of the game. First, the shades taking damage from sunlight, and second, there are shades that do not attack you. These details actually matter, and there is a reason why they are so short-lived. But a detail about the shades that is consistent throughout the whole game is the sound that they make after being killed. That is their language. Throughout the story, there are moments where shades try to communicate, but due to the language barrier, their words go unheard. However, on your second playthrough, not only do you get additional cutscenes, but the shades that do speak get subtitles. However, this video is about my first completed playthrough, so I won't say any more. The last contributing factor to Yoko Taro's storytelling is the cinematography. I already did a video on the prologue scene, and I might do more videos like that in the future. But something that I did notice is that during cutscenes with a lot of emotions and tension, the camera aggressively shakes, almost to mimic the same emotions that we are seeing on screen. I bring this up since I know people who complain about shaky camera work, especially in film. But here I think the shaky camera work is a stylistic choice and is therefore justified. So those are my thoughts after a single playthrough of NieR. But I'm not done yet. There are 5 endings, and so far I have only seen one of them. And yes, I do have motivation to see all 5 of those endings. With that being said, you can expect more NieR related videos from me in the future, and I'll be seeing you all in the next one.